So we'll discuss tonight a little bit about Shabbos emergencies, as hopefully we'll fulfill the mitzvah by learning about it. Like the Gemara tells us regarding Karbanos, the Gemara and Megillah, other places, as they say by other halachas, but the one who says Karbanos every day, that was the medrash which God told Avraham Avinu, you know what, you're gonna keep Eretz Yisrael. How are you gonna keep Eretz Yisrael? B'schus Karbanos. But Avram wasn't falling for that. He said, what about when the Beis HaMikdash isn't up? So what are we going to do? So the word says, by Amiras Karbanos, by saying Karbanos, so therefore that's how you keep Eretz Yisrael. So that's how I always say, kind of tongue-in-cheek, and not is, who's the real Zion, is the one that says Karbanos every morning. But you say, how on Yom HaAtzmaut, that's a separate shir. But at least we know the Gemara tells us Karbanos, it gives the schus of keeping Eretz Yisrael. So too, the Chayim hopefully won't have to experience any Shabbos emergencies, and will fulfill it through learning about it. But as the Yerushalmi tells us, and it's codified in Shulchan Aruch, the first shiur a rabbi gives to his community is to teach them about the laws of Shabbos emergency, pikuach nefesh. That we know the Torah tells us v'chai bahem, that you have to, the Torah is opposed to other religions that you die for it, and Judaism is a religion of life. And therefore, v'chai b'hem saved the big three. He lists the relations, dil harayis, shvichas damim, murder, and avodah zarah. So save the big three, v'chai b'hem, v'lo yamus b'hem. And therefore, the Yerushalmi writes that one who has to ask the question, if you come to the rabbi and ask whoever it is, that emergency, could I go to the hospital? Could I call the doctor? It's ki'ilu shofet damim. It's like you're shedding blood, because the time you're wasting asking the shaila could be the difference of life and death. And so too the Yerushalmi says, the one who was asked the question, hareza meguna, it's not a good thing. So the shaila is like, why is it my fault? Someone's asking me a question. In fact, the story of Shechta always says over, I think it was one sukkah in Washington Heights, the Breuer's communities there, to Rabbi Schwab was the rabbi, and one day during sukkahs, they were sitting in the sukkah, this young guy comes over, runs to Rabbi Schwab, my son's very sick, and I take him to the hospital. He says, quick, go, I'm sure he wanted to save the kid's life, but he said, I don't want to be a maguna. I don't want to be someone who's hareza maguna. But the point being what do you mean hareza maguna? So maybe I didn't get to it yet. The rabbi's going to teach him. It's not the first zimun in Shulchan Aruch, the point that it should be. No, so obviously it doesn't make a difference. Is what the Yerushalmi is saying is the first thing you teach is that if it's a Shabbos emergency, don't ask questions, or I like to say, better to ask forgiveness than to ask for permission, because by the time you ask the question, obviously you could pervert and take advantage of anything, but as long as you think it's an emergency, or even a suffix, a doubt, then you go ahead. In fact, it's a story the Chazon Ish says over in the name of the Chafetz Chaim, that there was a town, it was in Europe, I guess in Europe, it was a different world, that they were always on the run, they never knew when the next pogrom was going to come. They had to leave the country, leave the city. So a person went to the Chafetz Chaim, and the Chafetz Chaim was visiting the town. So two people asked the Chafetz Chaim the same question. One came in, they all said, you know what, I have to work on Shabbos. Why? Because I need to have enough money that in case when when the pogrom comes, I have enough money leverage to pay off the guards, to pay for the air, whatever trip. So you want to know, could I work on Shabbos? So he said, do you actually feel that working on Shabbos, are you just saying that to me, or you actually think that you need that money to work on? He said, no, I don't really believe it. That's what everyone says. He said, okay, so he says, for you can't work on Shabbos. Then like an hour later, someone came and asked him the same shaila, and he said to him, do you actually believe it? He said, oh yeah, of course I believe it. He said, okay, so you can work, so you go ahead and work on Shabbos. So you saw it being it, because that person, it's because, obviously there has to be a certain reality. Someone, if he's making up the story, you just send him to the psychiatrist. But it's only it's within reason, so we see it's all about perception. In fact, that's the story with Lot's daughters. They thought they were saving the world. They thought that they didn't realize it was the Sodom and Gomorrah that was destroyed. They thought the whole world was being destroyed. And they had no choice. They had to get their father drunk. So from that perception, they were doing a mitzvah. It was pikuach nefesh. They were allowed to. Even the result was they were wrong, but they thought what they were doing. That's why Moab, Mayav, they're saying this from my father. In fact, that's why, and from this, the Mashiach's coming. From Moab, Rus, so from an act like this, the Mashiach's coming? Like what's going on here? So they say over Ma'aser Moshe Feinstein, when he was learning in Europe. So he used to have every Friday night, I guess another rabbi or the Shabbos, someone used to stop by every Friday night on the way back from shul, and he used to ask Rav Moshe some questions on the parsha. And one it was the parsha, whatever, Yeira, one of them, whichever one it was, and he asked, like, what's going on here with Lot, Mayav, Moab, the Mashiach's coming, what's that all about? And Rav Moshe, he didn't have any, he said, let me check them first or whatever, I'll get back to you on it. So again, this is Rav Moshe talking, at least the way they say over this. I didn't hear it from Rav Moshe, but it's not a Hasidic Rabbi. So the way the story is said over is Rav Moshe, he had the Chumash open Friday night, after the big meal, he starts dozing off. I guess even Rav Moshe does, and he had a dream. These two women appeared to him. They claimed they were the Lot's daughters, and they explained to him exactly what was going on. They said that they thought, that basically they thought that was, that was it, and even though they were wrong, but that's what they did. And Mayav, they wanted to publicize it. Also, that they don't think also like. They'll think they're the only ones around miraculous conception and all that. They wanted to make it clear, no, this isn't a special case. Mayav, we did it to save the... So from that type of hergish, even though they were wrong, but that type of hergish, the Mashiach will come. In fact, that's why the halach, that's when you call up, they have it so in Toronto now or not?
Yeah.
I know it's big, it's big in New York for a long time, and Hatzalah, which is, Shabbos Emergencies. So let's say you make a call, and let's say for whatever reason 4 people show up from Hatzalah. Better to have that problem. You don't say, well, sorry, the guy already saved this guy, so he's Machal Shabbos. No, it doesn't make a difference. You're going on the perception that you're doing a Pikuach Nefesh, and then Pikuach Nefesh Docha Shabbos. So the Gemara in Yuma, on Daf Pei marshals a couple of different sources of how do we know this is true. How do we know Minayin Pikuach Nefesh Docha Shabbos? So the Gemara lists a couple of sources. One source is we learn it out from the mitzvah of Mila. That halacha is at least the Mila Bismana Ubayom Hashmini Yom Basar Lason Ubayom Afil B'Shabbos. We do Mila even on Shabbos, even on Yom Kippur, Yontiv. There's no day in the year we don't do a Mila Bismana. A Mila Shalom Bismana that you can't do on Shabbos and Yontiv. And we try to do it. And you try to do it as quickly as possible. And there's some exceptions to the rule that we know if it's a Ben Hashmash's baby, so it's a Safek Mila Bismana, so you wait until Sunday. Other exceptions, but the halacha is Mila Bismana is Docha Shabbos. So the Gemara makes a drasha. If we see for one Aver Echad the Mila with Docha Shabbos, how much more so for a whole body, a Shabbos Gufo, so to speak, with Docha Shabbos. Even though you're not necessarily doing the Mila for, it's not big, no one's claiming that the baby's going to die. I'm not getting into the Mitzitza issue, that's a separate issue, the health issue there. But the point being is, either way, the Gemara makes that drasha, we learn it out from Mila. Another drasha, the Gemara learns out a famous pasuk, especially in the Kalbach Minyan, and they sing Friday night, V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos. We say in the Shabbos morning davening, it's actually a pasuk in Chumash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos, so the Gemara makes this famous drasha that Mutter is better to Machal Shabbos Achas Kadesh Yishmor Shabbos is Harbe. That if a person, like the Rambam writes in Hilchos Mamrim, because we have many cases, let's say shofar on Shabbos, or we have a lulav on Shabbos, even though in our Torah, Yom Rishon or Rosh Hashanah you should blow shofar, but the rabbis say no shofar, Gzeira Derava. So the Gemara wants, so the Rambam wants to know what's the Gemara says because Shemach Yelach Eitzo Baki, the Yilmod, and you end up being Machal Shabbos. So we're concerned about Shmir Shabbos. So we're gonna miss shofar this year. You're right, you'll be lacking, but in the big picture, you're gaining more. And that's what the Rambam gives an example. He says, let's say you walk by, it looks like one guy's butchering the other one. It looks like then when he gets closer, he's wearing one of his green outfits, white. What do you wear these days? Green, white, whatever these doctors are wearing. He gets closer, he sees he's not butchering him. The guy had gangrene. He's cutting, or he's saving the guy's life. So too, the guy's still missing a leg, but in the big picture, he's alive. So there, it's true. You might be missing a lulav or a Shabbos, but keeping the whole tzur of Judaism, sometimes temporarily we have to put. So better to machal Shabbos achas, to go to the doctor, go to the hospital, so you can keep mitzvahs to the rest of your life. That's the second drush in the Gemara. And the Gemara is the third drasha, v'chai b'hem, the one we started off with, that the Torah is chayim, it's a way of life, v'lo yamos b'hem. And the Rishonim and Achronim give different nafkaminas between the different answers. Let's say, for instance, a fetus. So let's say it's probably hard to have, and even if it is true, you wouldn't even know probably, but hypothetically, mommy's not in, in general, Judaism is against abortions. It's an Issa Daraisa, whether it's an Issa of Ritzicha, Issa of Mazik, Machlokas among the Achronim, Rishonim. Rav Moshe was very strong on it. He felt it was Ritzicha. Tzitz Eliezer felt it was Mazik. But different nafkaminas. Nafkamina is the only heta would be if it's Pikuach Nefesh, if we say it's Ritzicha. So, however, there's one clear case that one is not only permitted, but one has a chiyuv to do an abortion. At least in our religion. In other religion, they say better 2 deaths than 1 murder. And I agree with it. I agree with the principle, not the application. I also agree better 2 deaths than 1 murder. But here it's not murder. Here it's a mitzvah to save the mother's life. So even though we don't do an abortion for no reason, but to save the mother's life, that's clear cut, because the mother is a full life and the fetus isn't a nefesh yet. So the question is, what about assuming you could separate them, that the mother's not in danger, but if you don't do something now, the fetus will die. You got a machalo Shabbos. So the Ramban says, we see based on this drasha, what does this drasha say of Shomris or Shabbos? That better to machalo Shabbos achas, so the fetus, the potential now, he'll live and then he'll keep many mitzvahs. On the other hand, based on Machai Bahem only, perhaps, as Tosas pointed out about Mitzvah, maybe it only applies to if you're actually a nefesh. In other words, Machai Bahem, like we have no mitzvah or Moshe rights that the Tosas about Mitzvah has to do with Elisha or Eliyahu Navi when they're involved in Tchias HaMesim. So they ask, the question is, how can Eliyahu, who was a Kohen, be Matame Lameis? If the child was dead, how can he touch the dead? So the different answers. So one answer is Pikuach Nefesh. So the discussion over there in Tosas and the Achronim is that that's only an issue if it's a human being. There's a mitzvah Rofei Cholim, but there is no mitzvah Miyah Machaya HaMesim. So perhaps I would know that he's allowed to, that maybe that's not Pikuach Nefesh, resurrecting the dead. So they have a discussion there where they make a distinction between like a fetus and a regular. So the bottom line is based on maybe a suffix Pikuach Nefesh. So, L'alacha we accept all these reasons, and even a suffix Pikuach Nefesh, and even a Svek Sveik, let's say, a building knocked down, and you think there are people in there, you're not even sure, and one suffix is maybe they're not there, or maybe they're dead already, and so it doesn't make a difference. Any type of doubt by Pikuach Nefesh, you go for it. You try to save the life. Why do we need so many psukim to teach me this? Why not this one pasuk? Why not this one pasuk? So that's what the Tzitz Eliezer points out, who is Zatzal, now he passed away recently. He was the Rav, he was in charge of the hospital in Israel. Shari Tzedek, is that the big one? He was in charge of all the halachic, medical ethics shilas, and he has many works on that. So he asked, how come we need so many psukim to tell me this? Why isn't one pasuk suffice? So the answer is because since we have Gemaras elsewhere that tells us that one who's Machal Shabbos, the Fahesia, people who are desecrating the Shabbos, the Gemara has an expression, Kiyu Oved Avodah Zarah. It's like you're an idol worshiper. So we do find some connections in Agadat anyway between Machal Shabbos and an Avodah Zarah. So I might think, well, a Shabbos might be like Avodah Zarah. This like Avodah Zarah, you have to give up your life. I might erroneously think Shabbos. Comes to Psukim, we want to show in many areas, don't make that mistake, even though in certain areas maybe denying Shabbos is denying God, but in terms of halacha, we don't view it that way, and therefore the big three we still have to keep. That one has a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, but the other 6, 10, and Shabbos we say B'chai B'hem. So one of the questions comes up, let's say in cases of Shabbos emergency, is let's say you're in the house and you don't have to go to the hospital, you can't get to the hospital. Back in my day, there were house calls. I don't know if they exist anymore. I don't know if you can afford them, but I don't know. But in theory, if the doctors can come to you, so the shaila, the post can raise an interesting shaila is, again, it's usually hypothetical because you never have two equally competent doctors. You always go with the best doctor, Jewish, non-Jewish, observant, non-observant. You go with the most qualified. But assuming all things being equal, you have two doctors you use, both Jewish. One is a very nice non-observant Jew, and one is a very nice observant Jew. And whatever, Friday night, Shabbos morning, sometime over Shabbos, your child's very sick. Again, Ramosha gets into details, what degree is, but others say you can't really give any. It's hard to give any. You don't want to give any direct because it's 102, I'm safe. But there are a lot of other factors that go in. So therefore, whatever the case is, you think it's a pikuach nefesh, you got to call the doctor. So who should you call? Should you call the Shomer Shabbos doctor, or should you call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor?
Shomer Shabbos.
Yeah, why?
You've given this year before. I can't remember the answer.
You can't go wrong with that. Maybe I changed from then. So as we'll see, there'll be different schools of thought. There's a famous Beis Halevi. Actually, we read this the past week in Parashas Shmos on the pasuk Vayeda Elokim. That basically God heard the cries of the Jewish people, and then it says at the end, and God knew. So what does the Medrash say God knew? Of course God knows. God knows everything. So the Medrash says the angels were complaining to God, how come you worship idols? The Jews are worshipping idols and the Egyptians are worshipping idols. How come you're punishing the Egyptians and not the Jews? So God said, good kasha. But I know something you don't, God said. I could go into the depths, the heart of a person. I know why they're doing it. Most people themselves don't know why they're doing it, but God knows why we're doing it. And He says the Egyptians are doing it barat, so they have a great situation, no one's forcing them, and they want to worship idols. But the Jews, the Kushi, Ashiba, the suffering, the terrible times, so they really, on the normal times they would not, but they're succumbing because of all the torture and pressure they're under. So I know they're really only like a nusim. They're really out of their control. They're doing it under duress, and therefore I'll exempt them from an onesh. So that's what the Beis Halevi says about Yedo. Only God knows, and God knew. So then the Beis Halevi goes on. He says, he doesn't spell it out like this, but based on the Yisod of the Beis Halevi, so is it better to call a Shomer Shabbos doctor or a non-Shomer Shabbos doctor? So the Beis Halevi has a scary Yisod, because all our excuses will get ripped up if we accept the Beis Halevi. But the Beis Halevi says, what is the definition of an onus? We know onus rachmana patre. We have a klal in the Gemara that if you do something under duress, you're exempt. Or exempt, there's a whole discussion what it means. It's pater mionshin, but it's not even a ma'is aveira. It's a separate share in terms of lumdus. But the bottom line is you're exempt from penalty. So what's the pshat? So they point out, the Beis Halevi says, the definition of an onus is if the only reason I'm doing this act now is because I'm under duress, then it's onus. If I would do the act anyway, coincidentally I'm under duress, that's not defined as an onus. So in other words, let's say you, according to the Beis Halevi, it probably have to be, let's say you're about to get into your car and to go to the golf course, and then, and basically you're going out to, and then all of a sudden you get your beeper goes off, and instead of making a left to the golf course, you have to make a right to the hospital. So according to the Beis Hillel, again, even the Beis Hillel have to be, it's not the same as just going out for no reason, but he says you're not totally exempt. You are labeled to a certain extent on Machal Shabbos, and therefore he says better to call the Shomer Shabbos daf. Not better, he says you have to call the Shomer Shabbos daf because he's saying the one who's, even though he's involved, he'll end up being involved in an emergency, but since that wasn't his intent was to go golfing, go to the beach, wash his car, whatever you do on a Saturday, I don't know. But so therefore, that's not labeled an onus. In other words, he's saying basically if you're ratzon and ones bahadi hadadi, if you're at the same time you're an ones and you're ratzon, that's not labeled. It's not labeled an onus. You label a ratzon. In fact, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman has the same yisod, but he doesn't give this example, but I'll give it. Is let's say you're sitting there at a business meeting with your non-Jewish partner. You go into a nice non-kosher restaurant and you say, I'll have some water, maybe some fruit, whatever the details are, what you can order. He says, what's going on here? They have the best steak here, the best, etc. So he says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm Jewish, I'm observant, I only have to keep the ritual laws of kosher. He said, there's no way you can eat this? So I guess, in case of an emergency, if someone puts a gun to my head and says they're going to kill me, then I'm allowed to eat it. He said, great. So he takes out a gun. He said, I want you to order the filet mignon, whatever it is. He said, in that case, I'll eat it. So basically the person, or the example I give is, let's say a person goes to McDonald's every day for the lunch special. And one day he's walking to McDonald's, he's about to walk in, and some guy with a ski mask comes behind him and says, I know you're Jewish, I know these laws, I want you to go in and order the lunch special, I'm going to make sure you eat it. So of course he walks in, he says the usual, he gets the lunch special and he eats it, but the only difference is the guy who's across from him has a gun. So according to the Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, like the Beis Halevi, that's ones and ratzon bahadi adadi, that's not labeled us. In fact, we say it in our al-chet. Al-chet shachad but ones of ratzon. So we see it even in al-chet. You have to do, a classical case of ratzon and ones is, where we forget to set the alarm in the morning for minyan or whatever. Great, I woke up at 11 o'clock. Ones and ratzon at the same. Oh, I can't believe it! I missed a minute. I really didn't want to sleep this long. So etc. So either way, that's what the Rabbi Chanan says. That's what Beis Halevi and the Panim, the other Mefarshim say it as well. The Hafla. The Gemara tells us in Yevamos, Samach Daled, it talks about someone who was married for 10 years and Rahman al-Atzam can't have kids. Again, so we don't, Allah doesn't apply to them, unless maybe you Sephardim, maybe it does, but in Ashkenaz it doesn't apply. But if you're married for 10 years, you can't have children, so you have to find another wife, because you have a mitzvah pru ravu. However, the Gemara says, that's only if you're living in Eretz Yisrael. But if you're living in Chutz La'aretz, you don't have to, because why? We can assume it was the Avon Chutz La'aretz. It's the sin of living in Chutz La'aretz that's preventing you from having kids, and therefore it's not the wife's fault. That's the Gemara. So comes along the Hafla, and he quotes from Tosfos in the end of Tshuvos, the Gemara about Eretz Yisrael, the Gemara, and quotes the opinion of Chaim HaKohen, one of the Bali Tosfos, who writes that during his time, whether that applies to our time, it's a separate discussion. But Bisman Hazeh, meaning Tosfos' time, he writes, there is no mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael, either because of Sakanas Drachim, the danger to get there, or it was too difficult to keep Trumas and Meisers, etc. So today with airplanes and the Rabbanah, probably those two reasons probably don't apply. That's a separate discussion. But either way, Tosfos writes there is no mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. So the Hafla, yes, if that's the case, if there is no mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael today, so then even a couple who's living 10 years together in Chutz La'aretz should have to get a divorce. You should have to find another wife, because obviously you can't say Avon Chutz La'aretz if there's no mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. There's no area to live in Chutz La'aretz. So how come we don't say that? So the Hafla answers, he says, because who are we kidding? I'm sure he could imagine 1948 having a state of Israel and back. But he said even without that, he's saying, who are we kidding? We all know if we could live, if we could go to Eretz Yisrael, there was no one stopping us. We were able to get there easy, and it's under Jewish control, whatever. We all know we wouldn't go anyway. So the fact that there is no mitzvah doesn't exempt us. It only exempts someone who would go to Eretz Yisrael. Anyway, so since there was a haflan to all of us, we're still here, and therefore he says that's why, and therefore it's still avon chutz la'aretz. That even if there's not a mitzvah of Eretz, but your ratzon and ones bahadi hadadi, like the Gemara says in Gin, daf beis avabeis, ein ones gets into whether yesh ones begin, ein ones begin. Let's say you make a tanai, the Gemara goes into either for kiddushin or gerushin, but if I don't come back in 30 days, we'll be married, not whatever the case may be. And let's say you decide you have no intent to go back. But what do you know? The bridge fell down. So, but I couldn't get even if that's the whole discussion. Yesh ones begin, ain't ones begin, but the same type of concept. If you ones and ratzu, bahadi adadi. One more example is from the Rinas Yitzchak. He's a sefer on Chumash, but he's a lot of stuff on Navi. So he writes, we know that Yosef lived to 110. That's what we do know. The Medrash says he's supposed to live to 120. He lost 10 years of his life. How come he lost 10 years of his life? So the Medrash says because when he was discussing with his brothers and they were talking about his father, when they said, Avdecha Yaakov, my servant Yaakov, they're talking about the father, my servant Yaakov, Yosef did make a macha, Yosef didn't protest, so for those 10 times they said Avdecha Yaakov, he loses a year each time, and now he's down from 120 to 110. So the Rinas Yitzchak asks, what do you mean? Number one, if you look at the Chumash, it only says it 5 times, not 10 times. Well, what was the 10 times? He said it 5 times, but obviously Yosef, they said it in Hebrew. He couldn't make believe that he didn't know Hebrew, so he had to make them translate what they were saying. So they said it in Hebrew and they said it in Egyptian, whatever language they were speaking. So they said he only should have watched 5 years. He couldn't make a macha in Hebrew, else they know who he was. And he couldn't reveal himself yet. So we see the fact he didn't reveal himself when they said it in Egyptian, the fact he didn't make a macha when he said it in Egyptian, he also gets punished for the times that he couldn't do. Again, if you're only in Ratzi, Bahadi Adadi, so we see this concept throughout. So that's the Beis HaLevi's Yisod, Rav Elchanan, and many other Roshi Yeshiva who go with this Yisod. They don't necessarily talk about the Shaila Halach Lamaisa, the Beis HaLevi does, but none other ones they're talking about in different areas. I'm just tying in the Lamdas here. They seem to be working with the Beis HaLevi, that if you're honest and Ratzon, Bahadi Adadi, so you're not labeled and honest, and therefore he says you have to call, it's not a choice, according to the Beis HaLevi, assuming you have a choice, you have to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor because when you're causing the Shomer, non-Shomer Shabbos to be L'chal Shabbos. Maybe you're over with Naivi or whatever. So that's the opinion of the Beis HaLevi. The Sitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, who was also, as we mentioned, he quotes the Beis HaLevi in his Tuvas, but it's not sure if he's quoting him as a pliya, as like, what's the Beis HaLevi talking about? Wow, that's a tremendous chiddush, or the Beis HaLevi saying good. But so the bottom line is, he seems to be throwing it out as a big chiddush of the Beis HaLevi, because in principle he disagrees with the Beis HaLevi, but in practice he comes out to the same conclusion. So, in principle, he seems to say, no, if it's a Shabbos emergency, then you're still considered honest, even if you would have Machal Shabbos anyway. However, so why call a Shomer Shabbos doctor? He says, because we all know the Yiddish Shemama, that your kid has a little virus, they think it's an emergency, the doctor gets to you, see it's nothing. So obviously, if you're a Shomer Shabbos doctor, well, I don't have to write out anything now. I could get you a prescription later. I could tell you what to do. I'll know what lights to turn on. Regarding the emergency, you're even. But the Tzitz Eli says the accessories, it's a non-emergency is knowing what to do. That's why it's better to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor. He'll know exactly the do's and don'ts. So the Tzitz Eliezer seems to agree in practice with the Beis HaLevi for a totally different reason. He disagrees with the Yisod, but agrees in practice. So I first thought about the Shaila probably 25, 30 years ago, I came to a different conclusion. I thought it's better to call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor. And then I found out I also had some good company on my side. I later found out, I don't know how they feel about it, but I'm happy. I had Rabbi Yaakov Kavanetsky on my side, Rav Moshe Feinstein, among others. They said a similar svara that I was thinking, and that is, the way I saw it is, Shabbos is 24 hours, 25, depending what time you end Shabbos, maybe more. But bottom line is you have a full 24 hours of Shabbos. So the Shomer Shabbos doctor, Chatzi Lashem, Chatzi Lachem, he's going to davening Friday night, he's having his nice meal, some learning, sleep, same thing in the morning, davening, lunch, sleep, or he's involved in Avodas Hashem. Why bother him? He's already involved in mitzvahs. The non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, he's at the beach, he's at the movie theater, or whatever he's doing, watching the football game. And so therefore, at least for those 1 hour, 3 hours, as long as get him involved in the Shabbos emergency as long as possible, and therefore at least he's not Machal Shabbos for those, since he's not like the Beis HaLevi, going with Yisod, if he's involved with Shabbos, so he's not considered a Machal Shabbos, and therefore I thought it's better to ask the non-Shomer Shabbos because you get him involved in mitzvahs. In fact, it seems to go, I think Rav Zalman, the Chaim Goldberg also says this way, on a similar machlokas, maybe if we have time we'll get back to, but it's a machlokas Rav Moshe, Rav Shlomo Zalman, where they talk about a different case, but this one as well, is, are you allowed to switch? You're doing residency, and you get picked for a Shabbos residency, and you have a Jewish friend who's not Shomer Shabbos, and he's more than happy to switch. Are you allowed to switch? It's probably a similar shaila, like they're doing Shmira by the Temple Mount, if some soldiers don't want to go to certain areas. So it seems to be a machlokas of Shlomo Zalman and Rav Moshe. Rav Shlomo Zalman says, no, you can't switch. You're over with Neivir. I guess apparently he must be working with the Beis HaLevi, so that the person is he's being Machal Shabbos then, or at least he's not a Ta'onet. And Rav Moshe says, no, get the same svara. Get him a tremendous mitzvah. You should get him to the residency at least for the next 24 hours. He'll be working, at least hopefully mostly Pikuach Nefesh, but at least he's doing even something Pikuach Nefesh, and therefore it's a great thing to do. In fact, it's Hareza Meshubach. He doesn't say that, but I'm saying that. So along these lines, we have a famous Gemara, which seems to indicate this way as well. The Gemara talks about the Menachas, Samach Hey, Samach Vav, Samach Dale, around there. The Gemara talks about someone fishing on Shabbos. So it's only a problem fishing on Shabbos if you know how to fish. The problem is if you catch something. Obviously there might be other issues involved, but the issue we're talking about is Seder, trapping, and you have to know how to trap. That gets into another discussion whether we found the chilazon or not, asar chilazon. That's one of the kashas. If you assume it's the snail, so then why are you chayav on Shabbos for it? Because something which could be easily caught, but that's a separate share. So they point out Seder Yechayev. So what happens? This person's he's being Machal Shabbos, he's a good fisherman, he throws his nets in, he intends to fish, and lo and behold, a little tadu just fell off the riverbank into the net, that he comes up, together with the tuna, the salmon, he finds a little child there, he saves the person's life. Wow, on one hand he was Machal Shabbos, one of the worst areas you can do, on the other hand he did Pikuach Nefesh, a great mitzvah. So is this person labeled a Machal Shabbos or not? That's the Gemara Shaila. So the Gemara says it's a Machokas Rava and Rabba, and we're not even sure which one's which, because they have different gerses. But one says you go Basar Machshava. The Gemara gives us the lumdis here. You go by the Machshava. Since he intended to Machal Shabbos, so that's it. So he's kind of like the Beis HaLevi and the Rabbi Chanan. Your onus and Ratzon Bahadi Adadi, you label the Machal Shabbos. And the other opinion says, no, you go Basa Meiser. It's true that his intent might have been to Machal Shabbos. The bottom line, what did he do? He saved a life. He did the tremendous mitzvah Pikuach Nefesh, and therefore we pass it according. The Rambam seems to say we go basa maisa, and we live in the olam asiya. We try to stay as much between God and them. We get into machshava. We try to deal with the olam asiya, and therefore. Rabbi Nachman wants to bring this Gemara as a raya to the Basa Maisa, to my camp, that it's better to call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, because at least for those many hours he's involved in Shmira, he's involved in Pikuach Nefesh, and i.e. not involved in desecrating the Shabbos. So that's the opinions of, so on one hand you have the Beis HaLevi, who says you have to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor. Since Eliezer is not as strong, but he says it for pragmatic reasons, but because you know what to do. And you have Rav Moshe, Rav Yaakov, Rav Nachman, or others that you call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, at least get him involved in mitzvahs, as long as possible. And that's why this is a beautiful Klei Chemda on that Gemara, this Gemara about fishing, which ties into it as well, that Klei Chemda points out. So we have the machlokas in the Gemara whether you go basa maisa, basa machshava. So we know we have two basic categories of commandments. We have mitzvahs ben adam lamakom and mitzvahs ben adam l'chaveiro. And the Klei Chemda and others point there's a fundamental difference between the two categories. That when it comes to adam lamakom, we're much more interested in the machshava, because God's interested in your machshava. And when it comes to Ben Chaveiro, no one really cares. I don't care what you thought to help me. I don't care if you help me or not. Many people, they have all good intentions. You know what? I should have been Menachem Avo. I should have did Bikar Cholim. I should have went to that. I should have helped this person. Should have, could have, would have. Because you're nowhere in this world. You have to actually do it. So when it comes to Ben that's how the Rav Aram Levine, the Reish Rav, he points out there are Drush. That's why we have the Tefillin Shel Yad and the Tefillin Shel Rosh. He says, number one, if you always know, you should put on first the Yad, then the Rosh, and then you take off the Rosh first, then you put on the Yad. So you're never left with just the Tefillin Shel Rosh. So he says, number one, he says, what's the pshat? Because Tefillin Shel Yad represents B'Adam Chaveiro, action. Tefillin Shel Rosh represents your thought. So for God, it's all about thought. God knows your thoughts and He wants you. And for God, He cares about what your intentions are. He understands. And He knows if you're honest or not. But man doesn't know your intentions, and therefore we only care about what you did. And therefore, the Ikar is, he says, obviously to be an observant Jew, you got to fulfill both sides of the tablets. You got to fulfill mitzvahs be'adam l'makom, the first 5, and the second 5 be'adam l'chaveiro. But you have to ground yourself when you want to start taking on extra. You have to ground yourself with mitzvahs be'adam l'chaveiro, because you're never left with just the tefillin shel Rosh on. You never just have B'Adam L'Chaveiro. It's probably a Bichel Hashem if you have B'Adam L'Makom and no B'Adam L'Chaveiro. But you ground. Of course, you have to keep both. If you want to take on extras first, work on scenarios, not speaking lashon hara when it's mutter or not doing things. Work on your B'Adam L'Chaveiro, and then afterwards you work on your B'Adam L'Makom. So the Klei Chemda says the whole discussion in the Gemara, the whole machlokas in the Gemara, whether we go Basa Machshava or Basa Maisa. That's only in the realm of Ben Adam L'Makom. Then we can have a discussion that Basa Machshava is the Ikar. But Kuli Avla agree, everyone agrees when it comes to Ben Adam Chaveiro, it's all about doing. And therefore, that's why the halach is, let's say someone's walking down the street, they drop a $20 bill, and an ani picks it up. You get the mitzvah of tzedakah, because the bottom line, it's result-oriented. That's what Rav Shlomo Zalman points out. We find mitzvah strichas kavanah, all the examples of the Gemara is by shofar, by lula, by sukkah, by all mitzvahs b'adam l'makah, by mitzvahs b'adam l'chaveiro. We don't find kavanah. Of course, one should have the good machshava, but kavanah is not critical. You mean, I went to the hospital, I spent 3 hours taking care of this person, bringing him oh yeah, I forgot to say harein muchuz. You mean you don't get the mitzvah? I'm not saying you shouldn't. You should have that in mind also, and remember to make the bracha. But obviously, you did the mitzvah in taking care of the patient. So the ikar is the result. Doesn't mean machshava plays no role in B'Adam L'Chaveiro, but the ikar is that. As the example I always give is, let's say someone donated $1 billion this machine, and they said, I'll donate the machine on one condition. that you put my name all over it, and and before and after anyone uses it, they got a sign they recognize and want them to say my name over it. So let me ask you something. Someone's dying, and the only way they could save their life is by using the machine. Do you think they care that person's name on it? In fact, they're happy to call them up the rest of their life because they're alive. In other words, when it comes to, no one cares about motives, they only care about actually saving the person. When it comes to mental health, it's all about results. And that's what the that's what the Klei Chemda said. So therefore, it's all about results. So too, when it comes to, well, it's not all about results, but when it comes to Shabbos emergencies, in one sense, obviously we want the result, but I mean, the result is that you have to go and, even if it's a Safek Bikuach Nefesh, a fake, any type of doubt, when it comes to Shabbos emergencies, we don't want to be guilty of the Yerushalmi on both ends, Ki'ilu Shofech Damim, or to be a Maguna, and therefore we have to make sure, that haste makes weight, that the first type of doubt, we go ahead and we, go ahead and call the doctor, go to the hospital, whatever it takes. Just to conclude with the famous Maisa, they say over with the Rav Salvation, the one from Boston, YU, he said over, he was the one sick, I think, so he was back in Europe, he was sick. He was with his father and his grandfather. His father was Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, and his great-grandmother was Rav Chaim Soloveitchik. And I guess he was sick, he was probably a kid then, baby, I don't know how young, and old enough to remember it anyway. And so the doctor came, and Rav Chaim, the grandfather, asked the doctor, do you need light? I guess it was doctor, so the doctor said, it can't hurt. Okay, it can't hurt. So Rav Chaim tells Rav Moshe, let's go, turn the light on. So Rav Moshe, he's hesitating a bit, what do you turn the light on? Is it really an emergency? It can't hurt. Then he started screaming at Rav Moshe, you apikoros, you heretic! I told you to turn, the fact he even hesitated a minute, he screamed at Rav Moshe, and he went to turn the light on. The point being, you never know, what's an emergency, and the doctor says don't start interpreting, I'm not sure if the doctor says he needs some light, you turn on the light right away. And the people always ask on Rav Chaim, but briskers are so machmir, at least that chumras have bases. Briskers are machmir, and they have based on Shitas Rishonim, they have reasons for the chumras, as opposed to made up chumras. But they're machmir, but they have reasons for the chumras. So Rav Chaim was, you're always so machmir. All of a sudden, you're a big mako. You're turning on lights on Shabbos. What's going on? He says, no, you got it all wrong. I'm not a mako on Hilchos Shabbos. I'm a machmir on Hilchos Pikuach Nefesh. We are a big machmir, and that's what we should all be, especially all the time. But when it comes to it, we always have to weigh value. Shabbos is, one of the most important ones. However, Pikuach Nefesh supersedes that, and therefore, you should always be machmer on Shabbos, or raise a meshubach, but not at the expense of being machmer Pikuach Nefesh. And that's why it goes by the perception, and this is the one more story that they say over also, based on, I think it was the Chazon Ish also, or Chafetz Chaim. It was a town where they were going to be under attack, and the issue was also in terms of lighting. If you lit a fire, I guess everybody, everybody is everyone would know where you are, because they used to have different raids, and you had different practice runs and this and that, and basically the basic story was there was a village, so obviously it was a case where if you were really, in other words, part of the raid, part of you had to turn, let's say, part of the practice things, you have to turn lights on and something like that. So I think it was the Chafetz Chaim, Chazon Ish, that, so again, there was the question that, number one, should you, obviously if it's practice we actually really need it, of course you have to do it. In fact, I think Rav Shefta always says over his father, Melech Shefta, maybe he was even in America, they used to have these raids, and he didn't turn on the lights on Shabbos. He knew it was just a practice. So one time the police used to come and say, well, could I give you a ticket? So he said, well, I'm an observant Jew, and so sometimes they let him get away with, sometimes not. But the point being is, So obviously, if one person's going to turn on in the town, it won't make a difference. So the point being is, if there's one person in the town who's concerned about it, so then it's pikuach nefesh for everybody, and therefore it's the same type of thing. Is we see it's the percentage. As long as when you're doing the Tachol Shabbos, when you're involved in the pikuach nefesh, as long as you think it's pikuach nefesh, so then you don't have to worry. That's the whole point. And in that sense, it goes by your machshava. And the goal, of course, is the end result. In this case, is to save the individual. So last week we were discussing Shabbos emergencies, and we focused on who it is. If you have an option, all things being equal, who is it better to call, the Shomer Shabbos doctor or the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor? And we said it was a machlokas to Beis Halevi, Rav Elchanan, and many other the Rosh Yeshivas in Lumdis, who says that it's better to call a Shomer Shabbos doctor because as someone who is going to drive anyway, they're not considered an honest if they happen to go for an emergency. Of course, the Beis Halevi would agree that if you are home not being Machal Shabbos and you get called out, even though normally you do, that wouldn't be the case. The case would be is you're in your car anyway, and instead of driving to the golf course, you ended up at the hospital. And Sitz Eliezer gave pragmatic reasons. He says, no, either one's okay, but it's better to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor because he knows when the kid only has a virus or it's not serious, so he knows what you can do, what you can't do, when to write a prescription, when to turn on lights. And then we had Rav Yaakov and Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Rav Moshe, who thought, the way I thought, that it's better to call a non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, because why? It's 24 hours in a Shabbos, at least for 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, let them be involved in mitzvahs, so they're only Machal Shabbos for 18 hours. So therefore, that's the machlokas among the poskim. And a similar issue is, and Rav Shlomo Zalman's on the other side, he's on the camp where you call the Shomer Shabbos. So because we have a similar machlokas between Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman regarding a resident. Let's say you're in medical school and there's residencies, and there's certain places where you're going to have to work on Shabbos, maybe all places, maybe some places, wherever the setup is. And the question is, can you switch with a non-Shomer Shabbos Shabbos? You got the Shabbos residency, and you want to switch it with a non-Shomer Shabbos. So Rav Shlomo Zalman says no, and Rav Moshe says yes. Again, along the similar lines, because Rav Shlomo Zalman says you're over Lifnei Iver. This like he assumes you're over Lifnei Iver. I guess if you call a non-Shomer Shabbos doctor emergency, because according to him, it's not an exemption. It's not considered, according to the Beis Halevi, it's not considered an honest. So Rav Moshe holds it's not a problem, either because maybe pikuach nefesh supersedes Lifnei Iver, or perhaps it's not even Lifnei Iver. Because we have a similar shaila that Jeff raised at the end of last week, is a very common shaila, inviting non-observant Jews to your home on Shabbos, Friday night Shabbos, perhaps on Yontif. So what's the potential issue is you're causing people to, I'm not talking about a non-observant person who lives next door, it wouldn't be an issue, but someone who lives a drive away, or even if they can walk, they're going to drive. So inviting those people on Shabbos is that an issue? So Rav Shlomo Zalman, he says there was a different school. There are three schools of thought in terms of Rav Shlomo Zalman is actually in the middle approach, but Rav Moshe Feinstein happens to be in this issue because he makes a distinction clearly between residency and doctors, because that's an emergency, so therefore he's not concerned. So because Rav Moshe was, whatever, depending how you view lenient, but he was lenient, he said it's okay. It's not Lifnei Iver. Yeah, over here, and this again is in the 1950s, so perhaps Rav Moshe wouldn't necessarily say the same. Why? You mean because the Torah changes? Like, what do you mean? Because it's 2013, he'd say differently. The Torah doesn't change, but the society does in the reality. So it could be during that time it was a different perception, because that was the common practice. Then no one invited anyone over Shabbos, before Shabbos. It could be during that time period that that's the way people would look at it. They would look like
that maybe that either it was during a time where Shabbos wasn't observed that strongly. You didn't have a strong period, and Judaism was just getting started in the after the Holocaust, and it was like a midbar out there in America. I'm not saying he would or he wouldn't. I'm just saying if his tshuvas are in the 1950s, doesn't mean necessarily mean he'd feel as strongly today as he did, but perhaps he would. He passed in that. So the question it was a rabbi in Detroit, I believe, and he has a couple. He said he wanted to know if he could tell people, maybe it was a bar mitzvah program. I doubt it was a bas mitzvah program at that time, but some type of program in the shul, and the people would have to drive to the rabbi in Detroit. He asked Rav Moshe, could I invite these people or tell them to come, knowing they're going to drive? So Rav Moshe feels very strongly against. He says, no, it's terrible, don't do it, etc. That was his truth in the 50s. So the one who was interesting, you would have who was most lenient on it, again, it's not one sheet, but the sheet that's known as a Moshe Sternbuch in general, was a big machmir. He was asked about, I think his case was that the parents weren't Shomer Shabbos, and the kids were, and they wanted to know about inviting the parents over for a Shabbos meal. So he says along the lines that he says, not only isn't it a problem, not only is it not lufnei iver, but it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to invite people Friday night. Like someone kind of like, what are they going to be doing if you don't invite them? They'll be watching the movies, watching the Friday night college football or basketball or whatever. And therefore he writes, he says it's not a mikshu, it's hatzalah. And he doesn't quote it, but there's a Rabbi Kiva Eger who has a similar svara. Rabbi Kiva Eger, when the Gemara in Makos talks about the prohibition of cutting the payas, so the Gemara talks about the issue of the one actually cutting them, like I can't cut your payas, and also the issue on you, the nikah, of actually have your payas cut off. So the Rabbi Kiva Eger raises the issue, I guess the case where a person's going to do it anyway, so it's not a matter of if and when it's going to happen. So he says maybe it's better to get a woman to cut the payas, because at least the woman, she's not obligated in the mitzvah. There's no prohibition on the woman of the payas. So he entertains the possibility of a woman doing it because you're minimizing the Yisurim. So, and basically, the Rabbi Kiva Eger writes, basically, the problem is you're not overleft naivir, but he says you're being matzil a person. In other words, anytime you're minimizing averas, it's a good thing. So therefore, you don't look at it locally as this is objectively doing something wrong, but you look at the big picture and you see overall, I'm saving someone from worse averas. So therefore, along those lines, he doesn't quote Rabbi Kiva Eger, but he seems to have the same svara as Rabbi Kiva Eger, Rav Sternbuch, that really you're being matzil someone, you're not being makshil someone, you're actually being matzil someone, and he says it's perhaps even says it's a mitzvah to do. So you have on one hand Rav Moshe, who is very adamant against, again this is in the 1950s, and you have Rav Sternbuch, who was very adamant about having, or he was very very positive on it, which is and Rav Shlomo Zalman has kind of like a compromise approach, where most probably go with the middle approach, and basically I think they asked Rav Shlomo Zalman, it was Or Sameach, which is like about Tshuva Yeshiva, and they do programs. I guess it was the general question of inviting. They have different programs on Shabbos, whether it was actually in shul or at the yeshiva, whatever the exact case was. But the point being is they asked if they could do it, and basically Rav Shlomo Zalman basically writes that he basically thinks it's okay now and it's a good thing. You're getting people more observant. What about the question of lufnei iver? What about causing people to drive on Shabbos or doing something? So he basically says that in order to make a disclaimer, if you can, or in the case for inviting someone over, he says if you're concerned about that, then offer for them to sleep over. That give them, even if they're not going to, but the fact that you offer, it shows that you don't want them driving back. Or they discussed different options of either having them maybe only come either he says maybe if you only get them for one, they only have to drive one way, they could come early for Shabbos and go back, or have them for lunch and keep them, have a big chulin and keep them to the end. Different answers, but fundamentally he agrees that it's okay, and he has a compromise in order to try to minimize any lefnei, at least by you offering, saying, to sleep over or some other options, so they understand. That's the thing. Most people, again, usually it depends which crowd you're in and out. Most people understand today that when people are inviting them over, they know it's not that they're condoning the Chilul Shabbos. They just want to, it's part of having a relationship, getting them more observant. But that's so in that area, Rav Shlomo Zalman, he talks about he's like in the middle. He's in the middle between Rav Moshe and Rav Sternbuch, but that's what the issue of Lufnei Iver comes up. So Rav Moshe, among other, Rav Moshe talks about other things also, even in much stronger terminology. He uses a term like a mesis. A mesis is someone who usually causes someone to worship Avodah Zarah, and then he quotes the Gemara in Sanhedrin that it's just not just for Avodah Zarah, it could apply to other things. Again, that's buffering the Chuvas in the 50s, so whether he'd feel, maybe you could argue he'd feel stronger or maybe he wouldn't. That depends on. I never spoke to him directly about the Shilohs. I don't know, how he felt, but clearly in the 1950s, and also I think has to do with how America was at the time. Also, but it's definitely a halachic issue of naiver. It's how you deal with it, yeah?
Were the other psats also in the 50s?
No, they were later. Well, Rav Sternberg, Rav Shlomo Zalman, they were a little later and stuff, but one was in Eretz Yisrael, so I'd say that's probably the more, in certain circles, they probably, maybe they still follow Rav Moshe's Shita, maybe on the east side, but I'm saying that I'd see the common approach is more either like Rav Sternbuch and like Rav Shlomo Zalman, that basically similar, that it's okay, it's a mitzvah to do, it's just a matter of dealing with naiver. So Rav Moshe, clearly, when it comes to the doctor issue, he doesn't think it's with naiver because they know, pikuach nefesh tocha Shabbos, so he's not concerned. But over here, in the case of this inviting, someone over, he has that concern. So that's an issue and that's the same issue. So some point out another heter in terms of they're switching Shomer Shabbos residency, or the same issue is on soldiers. Let's say the prohibition of going on the Temple Mount. So if you know the area, there's certain places where you're allowed to go, but that's a certain area, and even you have to be dressed a certain way. So let's say there's soldiers who don't want to go up on the places where you can usually go up, and so therefore it's the same issue about it in terms of switching. So Shlomo Zalman, based on this, should say it's a problem because then you're causing someone else to go up there. And Rav Moshe would say, it's not a problem, at least because they're doing, the assumption is you're doing a mitzvah, you have to go up there anyway, because that's the case of pikuach nefesh, they need the protection. So therefore, he says, it's fine, you're giving them a chance, to do mitzvahs of protecting the Jewish people. And then, so another heter would be as well as there's a famous machlokes, the Ramban Baal Amor, in terms of Milah. That the Gemara, we know Milah is Docha Shabbos, but the Gemara says, Rabbi Lezer's opinion, in the 19th parak, Daf Yom, we didn't get there yet, don't worry, you'll get to it. He told even Makshirei Milah is Docha Shabbos. We don't pass in the way. So, the case the Baal Amor and the Ramban have, let's say, back in the day, for health reasons, you needed hot water to be marchitin es hakatem belufnei hamil ben la'achar milah. You had, in order for the safety of the child, you had to wash the child with hot water. Today we have other medication we put on. We don't do it today. But you even machal Shabbos for it. It was considered suffix sakana to the child if you didn't put the hot water on. So you're about to do the bris milah. You have the hot water already, and the kids are running around, and one of them kicks over the hot water bucket. So if you already did this bris milah, well, okay, you're not going to let the kid die, so obviously you go and either get a guy or you just heat up the hot water and you put it on the child. Let's say you didn't do the bris yet. Let's say you're about to do the bris and someone knocked over the hot water. Do I go ahead and do the bris knowing that I'm going to have to heat up the hot water? Or do I say no bris today, we wait until Sunday? Because we know this Indian are doing bris amila bismana on day 8. So that's a dispute between the Ramban and the Baal HaMor. The Ramban writes, Ein lucha mitzvah elo l'shaitza. We don't have to make cheshbonos. The Torah says 8th day, that's it. Let the chips fall where they may. If I have to heat up hot water, so what? I don't care. All I know is I have to do a bris now. Whatever happens after, I'll deal with. And the Baal HaMor says, no, you don't have to make cheshbonos. What's going to be 25 years from now, 6 months from now, maybe even tomorrow. But what's going to be in the next 10 seconds, it's kind of like a psik reshim. You know it's going to happen, so therefore he says, you do have to make cheshbonos, and therefore only the milah is docha Shabbos, not machshirei milah, and you can't put yourself in a situation where it's going to cause you to be gorem chilul Shabbos. So it's a machlokas Rambam Baal HaMor. The Shulchan Aruch passes like the Baal HaMor. Now we push it off, and we don't have it today because we don't have the hot water. But in theory, we'd wait until Sunday. So comes along the Rishonim and Achronim, and asks, what do you mean? The Gemara says in Shabbos, you might have had this one and now you're filming in, the Gemara was taking a boat ride. You can't take a boat ride a couple of days within 3 days of Shabbos, because the concern is either according to the Rif, it's going to ruin your own Shabbos, or according to the Baal HaMor, because it might be Gorem Chilul Shabbos, that during those days the boats weren't the same. There was a chance you'd have to go and fix the boat, and you'll end up desecrated. So you can't take a boat ride within 3 days of Shabbos. We know Wednesday starts the part of the week that is Shabbos. So, however, the Gemara says, Dvar mitzvah, you're allowed to go even Erev Shabbos. What's the Dvar mitzvah? Rabbi Tam is very lenient. Even Parnasa, go visit a friend, very broad definition of Dvar mitzvah. So the question is on the Baal HaMor, last I checked, milah is a mitzvah. So what are we worried about Chilul Shabbos if the Gemara says for Dvar mitzvah you're allowed to do it? So milah is a mitzvah. So two possibilities. Well, probably more than two, but I'll give you two. Two possibilities are, number one is that milah is happening on Shabbos. So on Shabbos you have to worry about Shabbos. During the week I don't have to worry about what's going to happen 3 days later. That's also a Shomer Shabbos resident. If you make up the arrangement before, maybe it's better. And the second answer is because by the case of the boat ride, it's only a suffix. It's not definitely going to happen. By the case of milah, it's a vadai, and therefore that's why the Baal HaMor is machmir by milah over the boat ride, because one is a suffix, one is a vadai.